good evening, depending on where you're at in the world. My name is Isaac Montoya, and I am the Director of Marketing here at Upside Technologies. First and foremost, I would like to thank you all for joining us here today for week 2 of our 5th annual Airflow Management Awareness Month. I'll be joined here shortly by Bill Clayman. He's the Executive Vice President of Digital Solutions at Switch, who will be headlining today's webinar. I'll also be joined here shortly by Lars Strong, Senior Engineer and Company Science Officer with Upside Technologies, who will be giving a brief introduction for today's presentation. Before I pass it off, I'd like to go over just a couple quick housekeeping items. So everybody will be muted for the duration of the webinar, but we do encourage you to ask questions. And to do so, you could use the Q&A module located in the Zoom dashboard at the bottom of your screen. For some of you, it might be at the top of your screen. But please ask any questions throughout the presentation. We will try to get to as many as we can during the presentation, but we will likely save the majority of them for the Q&A portion of the presentation. If you have any technical difficulties, anything with audio or video, please shoot me a message through the chat module, and I will try to get that resolved for you as soon as possible. So, as I mentioned, this is week 2 of our 5th annual Airflow Management Awareness Month. Last week, Lars Strong spoke on airflow management best practices and cooling optimization. So if you happen to miss that, we are happy to provide a link for you at the end of this webinar for you to watch that on demand. Next week, we'll be joined by Mark Acton. He's an independent consultant and non-executive director for EchoSense. He'll be speaking on international data center standards. Mark had many years of experience in the industry and has worked for the Uptime Institute and CBRE, just to name a few. The final and following week, we'll be joined by Dean Boyle and Stu Redshaw, who are the co-founders of EchoSense. Dean and Stu bring many years of experience in data center optimization to this presentation, where they will be discussing how to identify the early warning signs of cooling issues with artificial intelligence and machine learning software tools. So if you haven't already registered for those sessions, we'll be providing a link later as well for you to do so if you would like. So without further ado, I'd like to pass this off to Lars to give us a brief introduction.
Thank you very much, Isaac. And hello, everyone. Really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. I want to start by saying that we're really excited to have Bill Clayman joining us today to discuss this important topic. For those of you that don't know, Bill is a regular contributor to the Upside Technologies blog, and he speaks on many topics surrounding emerging technologies, trends, and data centers in general. So there's a lot of past content there that's really valuable. It's important to note here that Bill is the Millennial and Gen Z chairperson with the iMasons, as well as the keynote speaker and key contributor to Data Center World's annual State of the Industry report. Those are tremendous reports with lots of information. Over the last few months, Bill has authored many articles on the Upside blog related to today's topic, and these have caught the attention of many people in the industry. So it's clear that this topic is on people's minds, especially as we've been experiencing rapid growth in the industry, coupled with the graying of the industry. And it's graying. There's a lot of gray hairs in the industry. It's getting better, but there's still a lot of gray hairs and a lot of people leaving, and that's leaving a lot of open positions across the board. So filling those positions is becoming an extremely high priority. And how we get going about doing that is the topic of today's presentation. So, Bill, I'm glad you're here to cover these important issues.
Thank you so much, Lars and Isaac, and welcome everybody to this very unique webinar. I'm going to call it a little bit different than I think maybe what we've done in the past. I'm going to take my technology hat off. This is not a technical webinar, so if you're going to be talking about any sort of advanced data center technology, that's not what we're here to do. Like Lars mentioned, I do get a chance to work with young people in the industry, right? As the Millennial and Gen Z chairperson, I regularly try and get out to colleges and universities and even start earlier, right? Junior high and high school people, and asking them, what are you trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish? What do you want to do in life? What fascinates you? And in working in the industry as a millennial, really became clear that working with a new generation is top of mind for a lot of people. And here's the thing, right? Gen Z, we're going to talk about millennials, Gen Z, and even a little bit about Gen Alpha, which, don't worry about it quite yet. After all accounts, if you take a look at the entire population, 61 million people are under the Gen Z category, a number that's already greater than Gen X and 2/3 the size of generation from the baby boomers. And as this new generation enters the workforce, the big question are, from what I'm getting across the entire board, whether it's device manufacturing to cloud computing to data center, how do I recruit and retain these people? How do I recruit millennials, more so Gen Z? And here is the short answer that we're going to be diving into. It's nothing like you would recruit previous generations. While people like me, millennials, were digital engineers, Gen Z, they're the real world digital natives, and their drivers and motivators are going to be vastly different. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. The internal, external factors that impact where Gen Zs might want to work, what employers kind of do or can do to tailor their hiring process, their benefits package, and really much more effectively recruit and retain this new generation of working professionals. I want everyone to do something special for me, okay? Right now, as you're listening to this, because this is not a technical webinar, I want you to disarm yourself. Put on, this is hard to do, an empathic hat, right? Let's practice some empathy here, and really try and throw out any biases that you might have. Now, it's going to be hard to do because I'm going to go ahead and make fun of millennials here for a little bit because we got to loosen it up a little bit, right? But before I do, like Lars said, I love working in this industry, and these are some of the people that I've had a chance to write for and do analysts and like an analysis around and just do data analytics, like I said. And just get a chance to educate the industry as far as what's happening out there in our world, because it's definitely exciting. That's me in the Iron Man helmet over in my office. I don't run around or walk around in it. It's actually very difficult to breathe and see in that, but it's cool for a photo because the eyes light up. I am a millennial, and I don't feel like I need to apologize for that anymore. It's just every time I feel like I'm sorry, but it's all right. I'm not going to do that any longer. But I really enjoy learning and educating others as far as what's happening in the industry. And that's a big driver for myself to help others understand the psychology and the nature of what's happening around the world around us and really how to impact people and what they do every single day. So that's me, kind of, right? That's me. I'm a millennial. If you are a millennial on this phone call, raise your hand. Just kidding. Oh, look at that. I've got people raising their hands. Holy cow. I actually thought I wouldn't be able to see you guys, but I'm actually seeing the hands go up. Thank you for participating. I appreciate that you're paying attention. And as we go along this, by the way, I do love an interactive audience. So please, if you have any questions or comments, we are going to save some time here at the end to talk about this. I want to start off with millennials, and then we're going to jump off into Gen Z and some other into other points of conversation. So first of all, yes, millennials are different. I've heard a lot of things, being called, or what we're being called at least. But yes, millennials are different. Now, I'm going to go through a few slides here. And if you are a millennial on this call and it triggers you, I'm sorry. But these are stereotypes. These are stereotypes around my generation and what people think that we do. Some of it applies to me. Maybe if you're a young person or if you know young people, maybe this applies to them. But I'd be curious to get your thoughts, right? So attention span, boom. I only got 5 minutes, while millennials are totally the Family Guy generation and love a good cutaway. I only have 5 seconds. As energetic and hyper as I might be, I will try to sit still and listen to people as they talk, because there's usually a lot of value in being able to sit still and listen. One thing that I, as a young person, learned very quickly from my mentors is, Bill, talk less, smile more. And that's been an extraordinary piece of advice for someone like me. And that's given me more than 5 seconds of an attention span. This is interesting, right? Complaining, we're another generation that understands how HR works might go to HR and talk about it. Some millennials will decide to put stuff on YouTube, which definitely will get attention of people, but also will get them fired. So don't do that, even though I've definitely seen this kind of stuff happen. This next one, I'm sure everyone's familiar with, as far as how millennials potentially send an email. So I kid you not, I've literally seen entire conversations happen with emojis. Literally the entire thing is happening with just completely done with emojis. So this is maybe not the most effective way to actually work. This is not the most effective way to be productive. I think sometimes if you're communicating with other millennials, maybe you can understand. But I've been trying to encourage young people not to use this as their mode of communication. This next part definitely kind of talks to me as far as it goes, right? So this is a schedule for some young people, right? 10 to 8, 2 to 12, 3 a.m. to 2 p.m. I kind of relate to this. This is a little bit more of my schedule. I don't really have a 9 to 5 sort of time frame, and I can tell you the Gen Zs might be a little bit similar to this, even though they might require a little bit more structure. So this is still fun, right? We still got a few stereotypes here, but one more. As far as communication, I will set up a group chat so we can talk 24/7 plus animated GIFs that weren't in the work email, because it's very difficult to put GIFs into Outlook. All right, listen, if you've got a good GIF or a good meme, that's all right. I mean, especially if it lightens up, but if it's in a professional setting, maybe not always the best way to communicate. And hopefully everyone on this call is smiling at this, because, you know, maybe we've grown out of communicating this way, or maybe we've certainly grown up. But as funny as this is, there's definitely some realities, right? This is amusing, and these are stereotypes. Some of this might be true, some of this might not be true, but we're going to shift gears a little bit. All right. So we're going to put our serious hat on, not that it wasn't on before, but we are going to put our serious hat on. And we're going to dive into a little bit of what's actually happening out there in the world, what I'm seeing. And these are real metrics and numbers. So some real world millennial and Gen Z facts. So as a millennial who actively works in with high school programs and with organizations to promote STEM, I've been lucky enough to be involved with some really bright and upcoming Gen Zers. Actually, I'm really proud to see some of the folks that I talked to here on this call with us listening to this presentation. So when it comes to tech environments or data centers or whatever the case might be, you really need to see this group as a bit differently, okay? They have a different value system. They have different things that motivate them, and we'll talk about it, I promise. And this is a new generation, like I said earlier, that's truly digitally native. And to that last point, where millennials maybe were digital pioneers, like I said, Gen Z are the real world digital natives. 40% of Gen Z said that a working Wi-Fi was more important than working bathrooms. And if you take a look at where they're being bored into, there was a Pew research that back in 1995, if you can remember that far back, I can't remember what happened like last week, 14% of US adults had access to the internet. But by 2014, that number was almost 90%. So, like I said, millennials, pioneers to some extent, they witnessed the introduction of social media rise, instant messaging, smartphone, search engines, the mobile revolution. But Gen Z did not only witness it, they were born into it, okay? Some of the oldest Gen Z, they're going to be 20 years old by the time they start entering the workforce next year. Let's let that sink in for a little bit, right? This is me, a millennial, telling you guys that Gen Z, the future, is going to be working, with me, potentially even under me. 75% of Gen Z said there's other ways of getting good education other than going to college. This is a reality that I need everyone to kind of understand, right? Uncollege, we'll talk about some of these other sort of different programs that they're looking at, and only 11% of Gen Z said that they'd be willing to take on the debt to cover the cost of college or higher education. That's pretty significant, right? And if you want all these numbers or where these reports came from, I'd be more than happy to share them. They came from different kinds of reports. And like I said, they're going to be representing a large group of people that are going to be impacting the world. I mean, 44% of recent college grads in my generation are employed in jobs that don't require a degree, and 1 in 8 college grads are still unemployed. Here's the other kicker, and we're going to talk about the psychology and the dynamics of Gen Z. Okay. 74%, almost 3 out of 4, prefer communications that's face-to-face with colleagues. So Gen Z, follow me on this, is the first true balance between interpersonal communication and digital tools. So you got to understand how difficult this entire pandemic, staying at home, being forced to use digital tools because they can't interact with one another, how difficult it is for them, right? For them, this is a paradigm shift into something that they were trying to maybe in some senses avoid, because they do want that level of communication. So these are a lot of stats and figures. Now I want to point something out to you guys. This is important. This is important to every single person on this call. I'm going to read out 5 things to you, okay? And I want you to really personalize this. This is around Gen Zs, millennials, but again, more so around that future generation. All right. So this is really why it's all critical for you. Okay. And again, if you have questions or comments, please do pop those in. I do love an interactive audience. And by the way, if I see my social media blowing up as well, do it. I will respond. Probably not right now because I'm presenting, but I promise I'll respond otherwise. We can keep the conversation going. So these are the 5 factors of why this is absolutely critical to you. First of all, there's no way you're going to be able to get ahead and retain good talent if you don't change how you view Gen Z and millennial candidates. Period. Okay. Unless you have a good paradigm shift and understand what's happening out there. By 2025, you guys understand that's 5 years from now. This is when I'm not talking like a decade. By 2025, 75% of the global workforce will be millennials and Gen Z. Right? Lars talked about, the graying, right? Age is a construct. I get it, but they are going to be young people entering the workforce. And if you're recruiting, training, motivating, doing anything that's similar to what you did with baby boomers, even Gen X, you're going to lose these people. You're going to lose this talent. They're going to go to somewhere else. It is of the utmost importance for you that's listening to adapt your engagement strategy in a way that's consistent with how these new generations communicate and work. The other really important thing is that, if you have not yet faced the challenge that millennials have brought over the past few years, you really do need to further develop your workforce strategy. Gen Zs are coming, and they are coming in way bigger numbers. Like I said, more than 61 million are going to be representative of the workforce here very, very soon. I can't believe I'm saying this. Oh my God. It won't be long until we're going to be talking about Generation Alpha. They might rename it. I don't know. But Generation Alpha, they're kids right now, right? They're my children, my 2-year-old born 2011 through 2025. They're kids. I get it. But here's the thing, right? You saw that trend and statistic about, not going to college, getting certificates and certifications, specific levels of training. If these employees are entering the workforce and bypassing further education, listen, in 2027, Gen Z is going to be old news and Alpha is going to be the new generation on the block. I mean, I'm not even talking about a decade out. We're talking within the next 5 to 7 years, an entirely set of 2 new generations who might be impacting the workforce. So please start to think about different ways that you impact and work with these people. And I know we're going to talk about it in a minute. Engaging Gen Z millennials is not about generalizations, easy generalizations, or providing free fruit and bean bags. Listen, I get it. Ping pong tables look great. Free vending machines are awesome, and you can get as much pop as you want every 10 feet. But that's really generalizations. Right now, the most successful companies are taking a more contextual approach to understanding the value systems of each individual employee that's coming in and how to motivate them, and then being able to categorize that into bigger groups of people within that company. You need to make small changes that puts employee experience front and center. That's really important to think about. What did we discuss earlier? Millennials and Gen Zs are different. Even I, as a millennial, will need to throw out the constructs of how other people my age want to be managed and look at Gen Zs differently. You're going to struggle to get good talent if you don't open up your perspective on how to effectively recruit and retain this new workforce. This is why it's important to you. All of this is important to you guys, because over the next 5 to 7 years, 2 new generations are going to be impacting the technology landscape, the development landscape, the technology environment, really pretty much anything that involves what we do every single day. And right now, if you take a look, because of this pandemic, look, there's no sugarcoating it, right? We're experiencing changing workplace and environment dynamics. And this next slide was super amusing, right? This was recent trends by generation as far as what people are doing online, right? So boomers are cooking, awesome. Gen X's are going to be super healthy. They're also doing career planning, while Gen Z is doing distance learning, right? So these are some of the things that folks are doing right now to try and be productive with their online behavior or do something different with their online behavior. And again, it's not just what you're doing at home. Our workplace has fundamentally changed, right? This is what it looked like. Just a few years ago, this is what it potentially looked like. You're in an office, you're huddled together in a classroom, you're in a medical environment, and now what's different? I mean, how many of you guys are in your pajamas? Watch everybody's hand goes up. You don't have to tell me if you're in your pajamas. It's totally cool. But like this is your new normal. I hate using that phrase, but this is what you might be experiencing right now. You might be on a couch with your tie on, but PJs on the bottom. You're working from your bed. You're working from your kitchen. But this is sort of like the new reality for a lot of people, and it's maybe not necessarily going to change. And across the entire industry, across the entire board, finding good help is difficult. okay? And this is the findings that we received from the AFCOM State of the Data Center report. We learned very quickly that getting good help is going to require a change in thinking in how we train, how we recruit, how we how we actually motivate these people to do better. And again, from the latest AFCOM State of the Data Center report, we found that the vast majority of people are struggling. More than 77% reported difficulties recruiting at least some type of personnel, right? Facility techs, engineers, operators. The respondents said that we believe that recruiting Gen Z and millennials is going to be different. Very different because of their value system. We found that organizations across the board are anticipating increased investments in training and hiring or data center personnel. And there's a variety of factors that actually impact this. So we know that the way people are going to be training and recruiting these folks is going to be different. Virtually almost all respondents of the AFCOM State of the Data Center report said that they're going to believe at least some training opportunities are necessary if their organizations are to achieve their IT service goals, right? And again, more than half. I mean, this is seriously what they're talking about. Find it challenging to attract young people into the data center or co-location industry, into the tech industry in general. So in order to entice this demographic, this is what respondents said. They're going to offer better continuing education, training, flexible hours, better work environments. And I'm going to jump into even more notes on how to recruit and retain these folks. But you got to understand, in the industry, whether you're working with people, whether you're working with young people, especially young people, throw out your biases. Don't think about how do I want to be managed? This is where empathy really kicks in. And remember I talked about this a little bit earlier. You have to ask some really deep introspective questions to learn about this candidate because they are going to be different. The way that you work with people is going to be flipped upside down. Now follow me on this for a second. Imagine you've got a little pyramid, like you got the food pyramid, right? We got the recruitment pyramid. In the past, a lot of times traditional recruiters would hire based off of three very core elements: experience, aptitude, and attitude, right? The experience you have in the organization or in the industry, followed by your aptitude to the job, your ability to keep working and keep learning, and then your attitude, right? How happy you are, how excited you are. And those are really the most important things. And in reality, we didn't get always the best candidates, right? And this is absolutely the case with young people, especially when it comes to experience, because they might not have as much. Those companies that are actually getting some of the best talent, well, guess what they did? They flipped it upside down, right? They said, well, hang on a second. Aptitude, attitude, and then experience are actually what's most important to me, because I'm going to talk to a young person and I'm going to see, well, what is your willingness to learn? What is your attitude towards the industry and the company? Are you excited? Are you willing to learn? Are you moldable towards my organization? And these organizations, the smart ones, they'll say, you know what? I'll mold the experience. I'll create the experience towards what I need in my company to be truly successful. And that's special. That forces you to be a little bit uncomfortable and think about these candidates differently, right? So we've gone from saying, I don't care if you can learn. I don't care if you're nice or not. Do you have the experience to do the job? Don't hire millennials and Gen Zs in such a fashion. It's just not going to work out well for you. Yes, listen, in some situations, experience is important. I get it. And some experience might be needed, but don't make that your sole level of hiring or decision making. So we're gonna jump in. Believe it or not, that was like the introduction. It wasn't the intro. It was a very important part of the conversation. But we're gonna jump into how to recruit and retain millennial and Gen Z workers. The following 5 points are how do I put it? It's a combination of my research, firsthand experience, definitely from reports that I've read, and actually some reports that I've personally conducted and done. This is all coming from me speaking with large classes, individuals, groups of people, people of color, all over the board, to help them understand what we're trying to do to make an impact. And most of all, I listened. Okay, I listened to them. I listened to what they're trying to do, what they're trying to accomplish, and really what the best way to get through them is. So the next 5 slides are going to be important. So if this is your moment to drink your coffee, actually, you know what we're gonna do a communal coffee drink, because clearly I need more energy. Hang on. All right. Bet you don't see that often on a webinar. So we're gonna jump into the next top 5. And again, if this is any time to be paying attention, this is a good moment. Let's start here, friends. Let's start here. A Gen Z candidate will absolutely shy away from a company when they have poor experience as a job applicant. Let me be perfectly blunt. This is their first experience with your company, not through a recruiter, not through anything else. It's their website. And when they actually go and look on your career page and they find a job that they want, they're going to click on it and they're going to try and look at it, right? So slow processes, bad questions, HR and recruiters not understanding the value that the candidate can bring will all impact whether this person will actually click next and actually want to work for you. Here's another point. Gen Z applicants, they're going to do their research. All right. So if you show up with these horrible ratings on Glassdoor, for example, you're going to have some challenges recruiting good young people. The point is to ensure that you're managing your brand and your awareness as effectively and as positively as possible. I'm going to give you a real story about a late Gen Z young millennial, let's call him. He's right on the border there. He didn't want to go to college, but he is an absolutely brilliant coder that understands underlying hardware platforms and actually knows how to build entire systems. He was applying for a job at, I'm not kidding you, a very large company, very large organization. We don't need to call them out. It was a very large company. And so what this person did is they went online and okay, cool. They go on the website and they, okay, please submit your resume. Okay, submitted the resume. It analyzed the resume and then it pulled like 5% of the resume. And it was a clean resume. I had a chance to review it. It was perfectly good, but it only pulled like 5 to 10% of his content and then populated it into the actual webpage. And most of it was wrong. Okay, all right. So the candidate now clicks on next and he has to correct all the stuff that he had already uploaded that the ingestion engine could do nothing with. It was just garbage. So all of a sudden he's like, okay, clicking next. Now 5 pages in, he's still filling out the stuff that he submitted through the first page. And then he gets to the final page. Before he has to submit, you're not going to believe it, it asked him to send and attach a copy of his resume. You know what he said? Forget it. He didn't even send it. He quit the process and he actually called me a little bit later. He was super frustrated. He's like, but no, I'm not going to work for this. If this company uses such legacy metrics on the front end of their systems, how do I know if they operate the same way? Well, what if their other stuff is so old and antiquated that I'm just gonna be ripping my hair out working there? I don't want to be a part of this organization. And so he bailed and he went to work for a competitor. And I was just like sitting here and I'm just listening to this use case unfold. But this is the situation, right? This person completely became disenfranchised without even talking to a person initially. Because of how cumbersome the onboarding and HR process can be. There are a lot of people on this webinar, and I'm sure a lot of the people on this webinar have websites, and I'm sure a lot of these people on the webinar have websites that have career pages. And when was the last time you reviewed it or took a look at it? Or maybe analyze the way that you ingest information or try to attract young people. I mean, this is something you need to review. This next one is extremely important and also very topical to today's environment. Take diversity and inclusion initiatives seriously and get loud. I can't stress this enough. Almost every single Gen Z person, young person that I've spoken to believes that diversity and inclusion and equity are critical and will absolutely impact whether they go to work for you or not. And don't just put it down on paper, actually practice it. This is a big point around diversity and inclusion. There was a recent study where 77% of Generation Z said that a company's level of diversity will impact their decision to work there. Furthermore, 93% of Generation Z said that a company's impact on society will affect the decision to work there as well. And remember, D&I initiatives, there's a lot of benefits here, and they do have a lot of benefits, not just getting good young people on board. First of all, a culture of inclusion will absolutely attract Gen Z talent. From a business perspective, there was a report from Deloitte Consulting that stated that organizations with inclusive cultures are 2 times as likely to meet or exceed financial targets. And again, this can't be something on paper. You need to actually practice it. And when you do, and you tell Gen Zs or millennials, and you show them that you're an active part of the community, you will absolutely make a difference. And these folks will want to, talk to you. They'll want to come out to you, and they'll want to have a conversation with you as well. This one's very important. And if you're a recruiter on this call, there's a chance that maybe we're connected, or I talked you into joining this webinar. Or if you work with recruiters, you really need to think about this differently, especially when it comes to millennials and Gen Zs. Now, I don't mind you guys squinting a little bit and taking a look at some of these career statistics and workplace expectations and working with Gen Z. So please do take a look at some of these trends because I'm going to call them out here in just a second. But I want to give you a very specific example. The millennial generation is often seen as job hoppers, right? And consistently looking for better opportunity to grow, make more money, et cetera, et cetera. Please do not expect the same from Gen Z. There was a study done by Indeed.com that actually shows that a younger workforce is much more interested in future-proof jobs and job stability. I'm literally saying this to you right now. Remember, Gen Z, like many others, grew up around a lot of instability. Many were young, but they still remember 9/11. And they did live through the Great Depression. So for them, stability in jobs, mainly in like high value based industries like tech, healthcare, life sciences, is really, really important. And they're different. Remember, they're different. Please throw out your biases. If you know you're going to be talking to somebody in one generation, and the very next minute, you're going to be talking to somebody who's a Gen Z, in your mind, you need to flip that switch. You need to change the way you talk to them and the way you actually communicate with them. Look at the 74% prefer face-to-face communications with colleagues. There's another really interesting trend saying that, work preference, they like to work and collaborate in small groups in an office setting. And the least ideal for Gen Zs, you ready for this? Working off-site as part of a virtual team. I feel bad for them. I feel bad for the Gen Zs that are potentially entering into this workforce because this is completely flipping their value system upside down. And we need to be there at least to some extent to support them. But if this is new to you, if this is shifting your paradigm, good. That's good. That's what we need to do. Throw out those biases, retrain recruiters, and be sure you think about people differently because millennials and certainly Gen Zs are different kinds of folks. Number 4, this is important, right? What can we, and PS, I love that there's like a million questions coming in. I'm sure that, Isaac and the other teams are like, oh my God, Isaac, you need to stop talking so we can answer some of these questions. I promise we are going to have a few minutes here at the end to go after Q&A. I want to go to the next slide here and talk about training and incentive programs. Gen Z, top 3 reasons for Gen Z cited to wanting to learn more or to wanting to learn and train. 62% of them want to be better at what they do. Talk about a beautiful intrinsic, just a feeling, right? This person, yes, money is important. Clearly, it's a very strong number 2. But beyond anything else, this person wants to improve themselves. They want to become better. I'm really excited to work with the incoming generation because just Generation Z, because I like learning about their values. I appreciate their differences. And I look forward to getting them inspired to do great things in the world. To that extent, the big piece of advice that we discussed earlier as far as how we work with learning and training with Gen Z, as a generation that can pretty much look anything up on YouTube and learn how to do it, employers should take note and take similar approaches. A lot of people that I've talked to, some of these really progressive organizations, they're doing things like micro-learning. Great way to meet Gen Z expectations and preferences around training and learning. So like mini bursts of content. I'm not kidding you. 2 minutes in length, not exceeding 15 minutes. Good, rapid fire. I mean, yes, the attention span is less than maybe potentially previous generations, and that is a symptom of a digital world. But it's okay. Micro learning are great. I mean, take a look at these stats, right? They want to be more valuable. It's not always about money. So if you go to a Gen Z person and just assume that they're going to want to train because they want to make more money, that skips an important part of their value system. Just to become better, to become more effective at what they do, to become more productive, to feel like they're making a difference. Partnerships with Coursera, Mission U, Uncollege will really help young people get specific courses that they feel they need to avoid massive student debt, for example. So you can partner with these organizations. I worked with a company previously, Coursera, that partnered with them to give out GCP certifications free, right, to all of their employees, right? And especially what they saw were that young people were above and beyond anybody else, the ones taking these courses the most in the evening and trying to become better. Other cool incentives that I've seen work with young people: gym memberships, rideshare stipends, transportation cards, definitely flexible scheduling, pet insurance. Very important. We love our pets, so pet insurance. Mentorship programs. Let me talk about that one for just a second. This is big. Do you, people on this webinar, have a method of one of your senior executives to become a mentor for somebody who just started? or a young person. In my previous company, there's specific mentorship programs where I, as a senior director, working with really advanced DevOps projects, would get a new hire, maybe a project manager, maybe somebody in a completely different division who wanted to learn about cloud and DevOps. They would sit down and they would do like a class with me, like a little TEDx over the course of 4 or 5 weeks. And we would create these mentorship programs for young people, and young people will love that because they get a chance to work with somebody who has more experience, that can get better at their jobs. And it is a completely different way to train and incentivize others. If you have millennials in your organizations that are middle management leaders, more outgoing, coupling them with Gen Z or other incoming millennials is great as well. Young people often listen to young people. And this is a wonderful way to embrace that culture and let them grow even more. Grubhub at the office, like meal stipends for lunch, that's always very popular. Flexible BYO programs. Do your people still carry 2 or 3 or 4 devices or phones around? I mean, it's like you'll see a lot of folks roll their eyes. I understand in some cases it's necessary, but a lot of times, I don't mean, there's really great tools and tech out there that can allow you to carry just one phone. And, yes, there's an investment that's involved, but it's something that, I think is definitely important. This next part is critical, and I left it for last for a reason. And this is something that every single one of the Gen Z people that I spoke to told me about, that was really critical to them as far as what they're trying to do and how you can help them, right? Help them dream and innovate. I love saying this, and I want to impart this piece of advice in everybody. Never lose your childhood sense of wonder. When you stop dreaming, you stop innovating. Okay. So don't stop the dreaming of these Gen Zs, of these future people coming in. Too often the future workforce wants to focus on the tech industry that doesn't quite see the big picture when it comes to working with things like physical systems and data centers. That said, there's definitely other areas where you don't need to worry about the data center, for example. So like I said, coding and DevOps, there's other things that you can do out there. I wrote an article like Lars and Isaac mentioned, called Data Centers and Technology Ecosystems Are Way More Than Big Buildings and Blinking Lights. And it takes a full STEAM approach to conquer it. And I love talking about things like, computational fluid dynamics, or working with quantum computers, or talking about how arts and mathematics and sciences and engineering go into designing a technology ecosystem before anything is even built, before there's even a single groundbreaking. But for those curious about, cloud and other kinds of things, there is a data center. And I love to bust the myth that these young people are going to work for a building that's already built. That's not true. Building a technology ecosystem, like I said earlier, takes so much. It really does take a full steam approach. And it's your goal as people who have experience in this to enlighten the next generation, to show them there's so much more to technology ecosystem than big buildings and certainly blinking lights. Again, never lose your childhood sense of wonder. And when you stop dreaming, you stop innovating. And that's one thing that, you need to impart on the future generation as they sort of grow and learn. Those are the big 5 things, right? And as we sort of start to wrap up a little bit, it's important to note, that this generation is truly different. And the future is a fascinating place. And we've certainly come a very, very long way. And I kind of want to leave this moment in sort of a little bit of a jest. I remember attending CES before all of this stuff happened. And I was attending this one booth, and remarkably, kind of understanding just how far we've come. Here I am standing in this one little location and seeing how far robotics have come, and what an unbelievable use case and scenario, right? It's as if this organization knew something was going to happen. And all of a sudden I'm seeing this little Charmin robot, right? This little guy that you can control with an app that's literally going to bring you toilet paper, right? This is a part of what our future holds, is that you're going to be sitting there in your data center, and all of a sudden you've run out of toilet paper, and you open up your phone, and that's it. It's going to come in and it's going to save the day. I don't know if this is necessarily a millennial and Gen Z thing, but it's certainly amusing. And it shows you that our future is just crazy. And it's pretty crazy what are some of the things that we can think of out there. I want to leave you guys with a final piece of thought. As funny and amusing as this is, and hopefully some of you guys are laughing or smiling at this. These next 2 slides are going to be critical. And by the way, we are going to open up Q&A here in just a second or two. And I definitely want to see what you guys are asking, because it looks like there's a good stream of questions coming in. Remember what I talked about earlier, okay? Where Gen Z are true digital natives, okay? And every single person on this call, every person, I'm looking at the attendee list, I know some of the names on here, you have a responsibility when you work with Gen Z or millennials. And this is certainly my responsibility as well. And what you need to be able to do is help them grow from being a digital native to becoming a true digital disruptor, right? It's kind of like a hidden superpower, right? You know, they know technology. You know, they're digital natives. You know, they're born with zeros and ones in their blood. But what you're trying to do is take that ability and help them disrupt. All right. That's the big difference here, is that you're helping them disrupt the industry. And most of all, you're helping them disrupt your business when they're brave, when they're not afraid, when they know their voices will be heard and actual actions will be taken. Your young people in your company will speak up, and they'll offer extraordinary ideas, and they'll offer you ways to think about technologies that maybe you never thought that you could think of in the past. So again, it all takes a paradigm shift and a new way of looking and working with this young generation. And one of the big things that I want to talk about again is empathy. A lot of times we don't practice it, especially when we talk to young people who are trying to understand what they do. So when you're sitting there with a young person and they're telling you about things, ask questions, learn about their value system, ask what motivates them. What do they want to do in their life? What do they see that someone's doing, not in like 5 to 10 years, but what would you be excited to do in like maybe 6 months? And you really get a chance to learn about them. And most of all, a Gen Z person will sit there and say, oh, hang on a second, this person's hearing me. This person's listening. This person cares about what I want to become in the future. And then they go back to you and they'll become in front of you. They'll be front facing and they'll say, hey, can we try this differently? Or give you a new idea. And that's when they become digital disruptors. And that's when it becomes really fun. I want to thank everybody. This was good. And I see a million questions coming in. These are my social media connections, all that stuff. I really hope that, if we're not yet connected, my social media is going to blow up and I'm going to have a bunch of new friends and a whole lot of questions about Gen Zs and millennials. But again, let's stay connected. I'm going to take a deep breath. I'm going to drink a little bit of water here and I'm going to open it up for questions.
Yeah, well, excellent, Bill. This is Lars again for everyone out there. I want to say you've covered a lot of perspectives here, and I think brought awareness to a number of issues that people probably haven't thought of in the hiring process. And I think that's going to help people a lot. I wonder if you could speak a little bit to, once you get somebody on board, what are some of the resources for getting them some of the specific knowledge that they need for being an effective participant, effective team member in the data center industry?
So there's a few different approaches, right? That's a very general question, right? If you're hiring someone to work in Airflow, for example, you want to get them to get mentorship programs, get them a chance to actually see how this stuff works. Learning with your hands and following somebody who's experienced is a wonderful way for them to actually understand not just how a technology works, but most of how a company does things differently. The onboarding process used to be, right? Here's your office. Here's your laptop, here's your email, here's a bunch of applications. You've got an HR, rep that'll talk to you in a few minutes. It really, the biggest difference in where companies are most successful with young people coming in is more of a personalized approach. Having a personalized representative or a personalized executive that's going to check in every other day. Hey man, I'm not in HR. How you doing? Do you have any questions? Do you have anything I can show you? A shortcut, for example, how to access like an expense mechanism? Because HR is amazing. They're also swamped and they have a million people that they're dealing with. Getting let's call them a personal onboarding champion. There we go, new word. Those kinds of folks can actually be more of a liaison to HR and answer more specific questions. And it will leave the candidate with a sense that they're being heard and valued and that they're not just another cog that HR has to take care of. So it's very contextual. If there's a piece of technology they need to learn, obviously specific training, like I said, Coursera is a great way if you have other institutions that you maybe partner with for specific technical training. But once they're on board, you might need to rethink of how you interact with these people daily, because here's what happens. The honeymoon ends and, this person is just another cog. They have an office, they have a laptop, they have a bunch of applications and HR is done with them, right? Having that champion, the executive champion, the management champion, whatever it is that continuously checks in with them. I mean, that's a really great little secret way of embracing and working with a new generation.
Excellent. All right, great. Well, let's turn it back over to Isaac and he can go through all the questions that have come in.
Mhm.
All right, thanks, Bill. Thanks, Lars. We got quite a few coming in. If you haven't asked any questions and would like to do so, feel free to start typing those in as we answer some of the ones that have already come in. So first one, Bill, do we need to be sensitive to any topics? I'm always concerned about saying the wrong things to candidates.
That's yeah. So I'm gonna give you guys an anecdote here. This is real. I was doing a webcast, and right behind me was an Amazon device with a screen on it. And during my presentation, an image appeared on there, literally for just a few seconds, and unfortunately, it triggered some people. I didn't realize this, and so now I don't have this device behind me. Now it's a benign ADT console, and I actually moved it, which is kind of like to the point of the next question. Do you need to worry about triggering other people? Do you need to worry about, kind of the topics? If you ask broad enough questions, and obviously don't ask, necessarily political questions in an interview. You should be aware, if you're a recruiter or an HR person, the kinds of things that you should talk about. But the more empathy you practice during a conversation, especially during the onboarding process, in terms of asking the person questions instead of just like pontificating, you're going to get a chance to learn more about them. Just be cognizant of what you say, be cognizant of what you bring up, understand that, the world right now might be more sensitive to certain topics. But I think that goes for anybody, to be honest with you, not just like young people. I think, a lot of people could be certainly sensitive. My big piece of advice is just ask good questions and listen.
All right, thanks, Bill.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to the next one. I'm curious if you have any statistics in regards to views on work-life balance for these different generations. Millennials seem to have started a shift in this area. Do you see Gen Z being similar or vastly different?
They're absolutely different. What a wonderful question. Thank you for whoever asked that. Yes, there's a shift. Again, millennials and Gen Zs are different. Where was that? Where was that stat? Hang on. I'm going back. If you're watching the screen here, here, this stat right here. 74% of Gen Zs prefer face-to-face communications with colleagues. And this is something that I saw across the board, right? They would rather collaborate in a small group in an office setting than be a part of a virtual team. So to answer your question, yes, they're going to be different. And they're going to want to be, they're going to want you to interact with them differently as well. So is there a shift? Absolutely. The one similarity that I would say I still see is the scheduling timeframe. I think millennials and Gen Z also don't really believe in 9 to 5. They believe in working productively when they can be working productively. So I think there's still similarities around that. But as far as their work-life balance, they still want to be able to live their life. They still want to be able to do things. But maybe unlike a millennial who is much more comfortable working from home, a Gen Z might actually want to go in the office a little bit more frequently. They want to see their managers, their coworkers. They want to see who they're interacting with. And that's something I have to get used to as well, right? I'd go to a Gen Z person, like, dude, go work from home and be productive. And they might look at me and be like, but I like you and I want to spend time with the people that I like and I want to learn from you guys in person. But I just dismiss that value from them. So, and that's the last thing you want to do is dismiss something that's core to how they function. So my advice is learn about Gen Zs, specifically to the person that you're working with. But believe it or not, they are going to be different. And there's a decent enough chance that the Gen Z person that you're working with might want to actually see you and not message you over IM or actually pick up a call or do a Zoom meeting. So yes, they're going to be different, something to be prepared for.
Awesome, good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's move on to the next one. We still have a challenge talking to younger people. Do you have any recommendations on how to approach this? What questions should we ask?
A lot of it, I think everyone on this phone call, I'm looking at a lot of names, have experienced a traditional interview, right? Tell me about your experience. We don't often ask about, like, here, let me give you an example. When I talk to somebody, my first question to them is, are you a dog person or are you a cat person? That's literally the first question that I ask in an interview. And it's just like, well, I like dogs. That's cool. What kind of dog do you have? Or if you have dogs. And that is a question to disarm the person, both me as well as the person that I'm talking to. It's not, listen, yeah, we're here to talk about a job, but I kind of want to get to know you. I want to know what kind of person you are. What do you do in your free time? And then we'll get to those technical conversation points as well. But like I said, aptitude and attitude, I want to learn about you. I want to know who you are. I want to know who you are as a person. What drives you? What gets you excited? What kind of stuff do you do on the weekend? What are your hobbies? And then we dive into, from there, the job, the function of the job. If they're excited about that as much as they are about the rest of their life and the things that they do. Because if you're talking to a candidate, they're super stoked about all the stuff they do in their life. And then you start talking about their job and they tone switch. It's like, well, hang on, what happened? Like, well, do you want to do something different? And again, this is just trying to understand a good candidate in terms of what they want to do. Challenge to talking to younger people. I'm gonna rephrase that. I think the challenge is listening to younger people. I have a recommendation to approach it. Like I said earlier, practice empathy. What questions should you ask? The questions you should ask are going to be more high level. Tell me about yourself. If they answer you something, it's like, oh, wow, that's really cool. Why do you think that's important? Let them answer more about themselves. And then you hear a piece of tidbit or information. Like, that's really cool. How do you feel about that? Or how do you feel about doing this in a role? Or, are you excited about doing something like this in your job? And see how they answer. Instead of saying, do you know how to put a server in a rack? Ask different questions like, oh man, have you seen any sort of different kinds of technologies out there in terms of data centers? Like, what are you seeing people put into a rack these days? Are they all different? Quiz them and see what they're like and what they want to do. I mean, again, you're going to gain so much more knowledge rather than reading off a list of questions. So talking to young people, I think we need to shift that to listening to younger people as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Bill. All right, moving on to the next one. I am a young professional in the data center space. How does one market themselves to external companies? That's a great question.
That's a great question. I'll tell you how I did it. First of all, you have to be visible to some extent. If you're not visible, you're not going to be able to be marketable. No one's going to know about you. So social media is great, but post good, meaningful content, thoughts, ideas. Maybe you write a blog. Maybe you respond intelligently to a blog. You might do a webinar or webcast. Get involved with other organizations. iMasons, like Lars mentioned earlier, imasons.org, Infrastructure Masons basically, is a wonderful organization that focuses on diversity and inclusion in the infrastructure and technology space across the entire board. But really, I'll give you a really good secret on how to make yourselves marketable and how to get in front of other companies. Make yourself visible. Reach out to executives. I'm lucky enough to work in a company at Switch where if I need to get on a call with my CEO, Rob Roy, for 2, 3, 4 hours, he'll do that. And it's a meaningful conversation. And this guy is legit excited to talk to me about different topics that he's experiencing in there and what we're doing, what I'm doing. I challenge him on his thoughts and his designs. He challenges me right back. I'm not kidding you. These are the kinds of conversations I've had. In 1 week at the office, I spent 3 days, 2 to 3 hours each day with my CEO talking about different technologies. That's so valuable to me as a millennial, somebody who will take that time. So as a young person, get in front of your executives, get in front of your EVPs, SVPs. If I have a young engineer come to me and say, hey, Bill, what are you guys working on? And I give him a perspective and he'll say something like, that's really cool. Is there anywhere I can help? Here's some of the stuff that I'm seeing. Do you know what happens next, Mr. or Ms. Young Professional? When I'm working on a fun project that's interesting, I'll say, hang on a second. There was somebody that talked to me about this kind of stuff. Let me see if I can maybe just get him involved. And all of a sudden, this young professional in the data center space is now involved in a new project that's visible by executives. That's how you continue to progress and proceed. As far as external companies, you need to be visible, reach out to folks, offer good advice, offer good questions and insight. Meaningless communication is that what it is? It's meaningless. But if you can provide something of value, a thought, if you're excited about the industry, that's how you do it. But the way you externally market yourself to the industry is you have to be visible in the industry as well.
Excellent. Thanks, Bill. And we do have quite a few questions here. We got about 5 or 6 minutes left. We're going to try to get through all of them, but please continue submitting questions. And like I said, we'll try to get to all of them. So move on to the next one. Do you think retirement benefits like matching 401k contributions are going to be less of a priority for Gen Z workers?
Great. I'm going to keep this short, right? I know that this presentation is going to be recorded and there's a lot of questions. So please, guys, stick around. We're going to, if there's any more coming in, we'll answer them. Yes, this is going to be important. Gen Z is different from my generation, period. Gen Z is different from the millennial generation, where, again, we were seen as job hoppers. We were seen as opportunists who want to go out there and work in different places and gain as much money as we want and et cetera. Gen Z is fundamentally different, right? Almost all of them are more concerned about job security, financial stability, and being able to plan for the future because they've seen the future of millennials literally rocked because of things like debt, college educations that don't necessarily pan out. So to that question, and everybody listening, yes, retirement benefits, stability, contributions to 401ks are going to be a priority for Gen Z workers, even more so than millennials.
All right, thanks, Bill. Let's move on to the next one. Where are we at? How do you think COVID is going to impact the mindsets of workers of all ages?
Well, we don't have another hour to talk about this, unfortunately. And whoever asked me that question, you're welcome to reach out privately, and I'd be happy to give you some insights. It's going to impact people. I mean, it's going to impact people, and I think, unfortunately, it's going to impact people, very much in a polar fashion. A lot of people in the data center and the technology industry, we fared well. A lot of people maybe in the small and medium businesses and other industries did not, unfortunately. I unfortunately think that the Generation Z is going to be impacted pretty heavily by this. Again, this was a generation that was actively trying to break down the barriers of digital communication, do more interpersonal communication, find a balance between digital and physical communication. And all of a sudden, this happened, right? They can't graduate. They can't walk down the aisle. They can't go to prom. They effectively can't attend college classes. They have to do this stuff remotely. It's a huge shift for them. It's a huge shift for them. Not just them, obviously other people as well. If you have young children at home, those millennials that do have kids, it's going to impact everybody. It's really going to impact everybody. And I think the mindset of the worker is going to be completely dependent on what industry you're at and who you're working for. But, as far as Gen Z is concerned specifically, I'm worried that it might impact them a little bit more than others because this was the generation that was going to try to break away from some of that, digital reliance and have some more of that interpersonal communication. So reach out to your fellow Gen Zers and see how they're doing.
All right. Thanks, Bill. Next one. Do you think motivators are different for trade positions?
In a way, for example, if you're working on strictly HVAC design or strictly on power design, or if you're really focusing on a specific type of infrastructure componentry, as opposed to maybe potentially, let's say you're an architect or a business person in the sales department or whatever the case is in technology. I do think there are going to be different motivators. So trade positions are usually more engineering, technical minded. You're going to ask them the same questions. Please understand that. What motivates you? How can we get you to drive further? Like what else do you want to be doing? How do you feel you're doing at this? A lot of questions that again, focus on empathy. You can get pretty far in asking them and understanding how you can motivate that person in a trade position. Let me be clear. A lot of times an engineer wants to be just an engineer. Okay. Sometimes they just want to work on HVAC or power systems for the rest of their lives. Excuse me. And you know what? Good for them. That's totally cool. Let them do their thing. But it's also important to continuously check in with them and see what will motivate them. I think the motivators are going to be different, but the questions that you ask to find out what those motivators are going to be very similar.
Excellent. Thanks, Bill. I think we have time for one more. We'll see, maybe two. But we'll move on to the next one. How do we practice empathy while at the same time inculcate the sense of mission critical urgency and operational readiness, similar to how military are being groomed?
Wow. If I could give a gold star to that question, I would. Here's the thing, right? We work with a lot of military people at Switch. And I found that their level of respect and training that they've received and just the kind of upstanding people they are gives them in some senses an inherent gift of empathy where their respect will make them ask questions and they won't say anything that they might feel will hurt you, right? Obviously it's different in some situations, but practicing empathy, even though, you're trying to figure out the time, mission critical urgency, there's nothing that's going to change the mission critical nature of whatever you're working on. If something's important and something's on fire, you shouldn't be saying, hey, how does this fire make you feel, right? You're going to say, go put out the fire. Go put out the fire right now, and then we'll talk about it. So, practice empathy intelligently, right? If something's really going down and you've got an emergency, it's not the right time to practice empathy, right? You need to think about that. But even in that sense, you might find an engineer that doesn't perform well in mission critical urgency situations. So you might have somebody else that does. But a lot of that will come through questions and empathy. It's hard to do that sometimes because you want to immediately have like an emotional response or throw in your own perspective in that. But again, you can still practice empathy even in mission critical, urgent kind of operations where you need to have a level of operational readiness. But in those situations when it's on call, when it's like, something's going down, it's probably, you need to have people you can rely on that are trained that won't break down in that situation. Again, maybe not a time to ask empathic questions when stuff's on fire. But great question. You need to know when to practice empathy and when to, put out a fire.
All right, thanks, Bill. So we are over our time here. We got one more question that I will answer very quickly. Do you always have so much energy? And I think the answer to that is yes, Bill always has this much energy. So great job, Bill. We were so happy to have you. Tons of questions. This was a great webinar, great engagement. Thank you to everybody who joined us. And Bill, if you have any closing thoughts, please feel free to take it away.
Thank you so much, everybody. Stay connected. Keep this conversation going. Don't be shy. Reach out to me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever you want. Any questions at all, I'm here to empower you and certainly the future generation. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining. I appreciate you.